with his aim was destroying Obama's legacy. I mean, he was really obsessed with Obama's legacy. He launched a maximum pressure campaign and imposed the most extensive and comprehensive sanctions ever, even though Iran was in full compliance with the deal and in full cooperation with the IAEA, and the IAEA confirmed the peaceful nature of Iranian nuclear program. In addition, President Trump ordered the assassination of a very popular general of Iran, General Qasem Soleimani, and then designated the IRGC as a terrorist organization. These actions, taken under pressure from Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, brought US-Iran relations to the most hostile point since 1979. You can see how diplomacy can work and how sanctions and pressures could be counterproductive just in some years of relation between Iran and the US. Then we had President Biden. His aim was to revive the JCPOA. He publicly announced, but unfortunately, his administration and himself, they were pressured by, again, Prime Minister Netanyahu. And ultimately, Biden decided not to revive the deal, and he had a strategy of no deal, no crisis. That's why he kept all sanctions imposed during President Trump, 1,500 sanctions during President Trump, and more, he imposed about 800 more sanctions on Iran. I mean, practically it was a failure of diplomacy even during President Biden. And finally, we are coming to Trump too. At the start of Trump's second term, just within some days after inauguration, he signed a memorandum to revive the maximum pressure campaign. I mean, he did not let any time for diplomacy. First, he did what he could. He imposed, again, the memorandum of maximum pressure, and he started to impose more sanctions every week, if not every day. Nevertheless, he called for negotiation with Iran. Iran agreed, and on April 12, Steve Witkoff, the representative of President Trump, and Araghchi met in Oman to see what they can do. Again here, unfortunately, Trump gave a 2-month ultimatum to Iran on April 12. I mean, at the beginning of his work, he imposed maximum pressure sanctions. And at the beginning of the talks, he threatened Iran with a 2-month ultimatum on April 12. Nevertheless, everybody was surprised, and I was more than surprised, because the 2 rounds of talks, April 12 and April 19 in Oman and Rome, between American Iranian negotiators, they agreed on 4 major principles. The number 1 was Iran would return to full implementation of the IAEA transparency mechanisms, including additional protocol. Open nuclear program by Iran. Number 2, Iran would cooperate to resolve all IAEA's technical concerns and ambiguity to reconfirm the peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program. Number 3, Iran would dilute or export the stockpile of 60%, because Iran has about 400 kilogram stockpile of 60% enriched uranium. It is a matter of concern for Europe and the US that Iran can make 10 nuclear bombs with this stockpile. That's why Iran agreed and said, I will export or I will dilute it. And number 4 was Iran accepted to stop high-level enrichment at level of 60%, at the level of 20%, to go below 5%, which is civilian enrichment, in order to alleviate military enrichment fears. Both sides agreed for technical experts to meet on Wednesday, April 23rd in Oman to finalize a text for signature on April 26th. However, before the technical team they meet, 2 days before that, Netanyahu called President Trump and the US canceled the expert level meeting and changed its position from accepting civilian enrichment to demanding zero enrichment. Therefore, with one phone call, whatever they agreed in the first two terms was blown up. Although negotiation paused temporarily, the fourth and the fifth round of talks continued, and a new idea was raised, a regional consortium for multilateral enrichment. Frank von Hippel, Dr. Zia Mian, Dr. Alex Glasser, nuclear scientist at Princeton University, which you know them, authored an op-ed, an article proposing a regional consortium for multilateral enrichment in the Persian Gulf, rather than the other countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia to have national enrichment. I was also one of the co-authors. However, the detail of such a proposal was not discussed, but the idea of a regional consortium for multilateral enrichment was raised in the fourth and fifth round of negotiations. From this point, a series of events happened which indicates a coordinated, pre-planned US-Israeli military operation intended to deceive Iran through fake negotiations, which I will go very quickly over all these points. Number one, with Trump's deadline expiring on June 12th, the two months deadline, Steve Witkoff proposed June 15 for the sixth round of talks. While Iranians, they were ready 1 or 2 weeks before June 12, he was postponing, and ultimately he proposed June 15. It means 3 days after the deadline. Number two, on June 10th, 2 days before deadline, the US and EU3, Germany, UK, France, submitted a draft IAEA resolution citing Iran's non-compliance with NPT, based on Director General Gharousi's report. While Gharousi acknowledged no evidence of bomb-making intent, no evidence of diversion of Iranian nuclear program toward weaponization, he claimed Iran breached its NPT application. However, the technical issues raised by Gharousi had already been resolved and closed in December 2015. It was about possible military dimension issues, PMD, which was resolved, already investigated, and the file was closed in 2015 after the deal. And all of these issues, they were dated back to 23 to 30 years ago. Nothing about the current or the recent developments. Number three, the planned June phone call between EU3 ministers and Araqchi, they were supposed to have a telephone conversation on June 11, and suddenly the EU3 ministers, they canceled. And Iran didn't know why they canceled. Number four, on the afternoon of June 12th, exactly the 2-month deadline of President Trump, the IAEA Board of Governors passed the resolution, and within hours, just within hours after this resolution, Israel launched a military strike on Iran. The resolution was timed precisely as Trump's 60 days deadline expires. While Israeli planes were loading hundreds of tons of bombs, exactly the same time, the same date. There is no doubt, it has been said also already in many American, European media, even officials, that the Israeli military operation had been coordinated with the US months, if not years in advance. Israelis, they said we were working on this attack for 15 years. Some other officials, they said 8 years. And Americans also, they said they have been in touch with Israelis for years about this military operation. And that's why the advisor of Iranian Supreme Leader, once the top nuclear negotiator, Ali Shamkhani, said the nuclear negotiation with Iran was and is US deceptive plan. In full coordination with the US and NATO, Israel launched a surprise attack on 3 major nuclear sites and multiple military centers in Iran, killing numerous senior military commanders and many nuclear scientists in less than 24 hours. The operation aimed to dismantle Iranian nuclear program, to dismantle Iranian missile facilities and capabilities, and they were assuming that Iranian nation, since they are unsatisfied with the current government, they will uprise and we will have a chaos domestically, and then the NATO, Israel, and the US, maybe they would be able to make Iran in a similar situation like Syria and Libya, ultimately leading to Iranian disintegration. Many Israeli officials publicly, they talked about regime change and disintegration of Iran. However, again, surprisingly, within 48 hours, Iran launched nearly 100 missiles at Israel. And Iranian society, Iranian nation, across political factions, united against Israeli aggression and supported the armed forces of Iran. Just 5 days after Israeli strike, on June 17, President Trump tweeted a threat to assassinate Iranian supreme leader and demanded Iran unconditional surrender. I mean, he said either Iran should surrender unconditionally, or Iran would see an extremely worse situation than the current situation. During the first week, Israeli attacks on Iranian cities, many cities, caused massive destruction. Unbelievable. About 5,000 people, they were killed or injured. The worst since the 8 years Iran-Iraq war, 1980-88. However, each Israeli strike was met with a barrage of Iranian missiles, generating fears in Israel and concern in the US and Europe over a possible Israeli defeat. Israeli losses from Iranian missile attacks were also unprecedented since the 1973 war. I mean, this was the miscalculations Israelis and Americans they had attacking Iran. On June 18, the UK foreign minister met in Washington and invited Iranian foreign minister to meet on June 20th with EU3. They met in Geneva on June 20, and they agreed that they pursue further meeting in days for a diplomatic solution. Yet, just hours after this meeting, US B-2 bombers and dozens of US jet fighters bombed 3 Iranian nuclear sites in Fordo, Isfahan, and Natanz. And Trump declared officially the total destruction of Iran's nuclear industry. While the European foreign ministers were negotiating diplomacy, US B-52 bombers were on their way to bomb Iranian nuclear facilities. Iranian foreign minister, he said, I just quote, "We were in middle of diplomacy. We were in middle of talks with the United States when Israelis blow it up. And again, we were in middle of talks and negotiation with Europeans when this time Americans decided to blow it up. It was not Iran, but the US that betrayed diplomacy." In return of the US strike, just less than 48 hours in retaliation, Iran attacked the US military base in Qatar, Al Udeid Air Base, military base, which is the headquarters for US Central Command known as CENTCOM, which directs US military operation in the region, stretching from Egypt in the west to Kazakhstan to East Asia. Rather than responding to Iranian missile attacks suddenly and based on the request of Prime Minister Netanyahu, President Trump unilaterally announced a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, which practically was mediated by Qataris in phone calls with President Trump. However, the fact is that for the first time in history, 2 nuclear states have attacked the nuclear facility of a non-nuclear weapon state, which was its nuclear facility was under the IAEA safeguard. It is for the first time in the history. Since 2003, all the IAEA reports have confirmed that there is no evidence of diversion of Iranian nuclear program toward weaponization. If they have had many technical questions, yes, but always you see this phrase in every report or resolution, there is no evidence of diversion of Iranian nuclear program toward weaponization. Nevertheless, Israel, as the only country in the Middle East possessing at least 9 nuclear bombs, attacked Iranian nuclear facilities on the pretext of combating nuclear proliferation in the Middle East. Since 2007, US intelligence agencies have consistently stated in their annual assessments that there is no evidence indicating the Iranian officials have made a decision to build nuclear bomb. Nevertheless, the US, despite possessing over 5,000 nuclear bombs, attacked Iran's nuclear facilities under the pretext of combating nuclear proliferation. The coordinated US-Israeli attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities and military sites have been widely characterized by international legal bodies and scholars as violating multiple layers of international law, which I will just mention 5 of them. Breaching the UN Charter's prohibition on the use of force. Violating humanitarian law by targeting civilians and nuclear facilities under the supervision of IAEA. Breaching IAEA statutes, safeguard, and rules and regulations of the IAEA. Undermining the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, and acting outside the scope of UN Security Council authorized measures. dozens of legally binding and normative instruments affirm that states, all countries, and the IAEA must protect nuclear facilities of NPT members on which are on their safeguard agreement from any military strike or threats. The agency not only monitors compliance, but also upholds international legal standard to safeguard nuclear security. The IAEA and the United Nations Security Council even did not issue a simple statement condemning the attack. While all Western powers supported the US-Israeli attack on Iran, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz praised Israel for attacking Iran and said, I'm quoting, Israel is doing the dirty job for us, which we cannot do. At the celebration of military actions, whether Israeli attack or American attack against Iran, signifies a symbolic dismantling of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, as a credible international regime. What was stuck was not just enrichment capability of Iran. It was the foundational premise that legal compliance offers security. This action marked a significant shift in the logic of proliferation. The US bombing of Iranian nuclear infrastructure also signals a strategic shift with far-reaching consequences. The NPT regime, already weakened by the Western double standards, now risks terminal collapse. Iran, as member of NPT, which has given access to IAEA more than every other member of NPT, and which has accepted the highest level of transparency, and which has accepted the most comprehensive limits, has been attacked. Now Iran found itself punished rather than protected. The implication is stark. The treaty does not provide security. It exposes vulnerability. Withdrawal from the NPT, once politically unthinkable, now seems strategically rational. The bomb, once considered a threat, has become the only viable shield and the best deterrence to prevent a country to be attacked. No bomb can erase knowledge. Iran already has the knowledge. No missile can obliterate scientific memory. Technical capacity, once acquired, is not so easily to be destroyed. Infrastructure can be rebuilt. Expertise is retained. I mean, they can go back. You may, if the objective was to delay Iranian nuclear capability for some months or even some years, maybe they have reached. But the more probable result is to accelerate it now, this time in a total opacity. For many politicians in Iran, exit from NPT now appears plausible, imminent, and the only credible deterrence. The US and Israel strike on Iran's nuclear sites did not just targeted infrastructure, to my understanding. It signaled the collapse of the global non-proliferation regime. In response to the attacks and inability of the IAEA and United Nations Security Council to protect Iran, the Iranian parliament passed a new legislation suspending cooperation with the IAEA unless three conditions are met. Number one, guaranteeing Iran's national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Number two, ensuring the safety of Iran's nuclear facilities and scientists. Number three, respecting Iran's right under Article 4 of NPT for enjoying peaceful nuclear technology. The Iranian foreign minister said, I'm quoting, this decision of parliament is a direct consequences of Rafael Garrousi's regrettable role in concealing the fact that the agency officially closed all past issues a decade ago. While this biased action had directly paved the way for adoption of a politically motivated resolution against Iran in the IAEA Board of Governors, and also facilitated illegal Israeli and American attacks on Iranian nuclear sites. Garrousi, in addition, astonishingly and contrary to his professional duties, has refused to explicitly condemn such a clear violation of the agency's safeguard regulations and its statute. The IAEA and its Director General bear full responsibility for this abhorrent situation. Garrousi's insistence on visiting the bombed sites under the pretext of safeguard inspection is meaningless and may even have malicious intent. This is what the Iranian foreign minister said. This is really what is the political domestic atmosphere in Iran now after the two attacks. Nevertheless, as some of you, if not all, know, I have been advocating, elaborating on every possible solution for peace between Iran and the US. At least 15 years, I had been at Princeton University. And now, again, I believe what I have been saying and insisting was really correct. If President Trump is committed for a genuine diplomacy, authentic diplomacy, he must first seek a deal with Iran within the framework of international norms and laws and regulations. Second, abandon the language of threats, assassinations, attacking, or humiliation of Iranian nation. Third, end the double standards. The world cannot accept America's claim of opposing nuclear weapon while it offers unconditional support to nuclear-armed Israel and simultaneously attacks non-nuclear Iran. To reach a sustainable deal between Iran and the US, I hope they will go to negotiation rather than to more war, more strike, even withdrawal of Iranian from NPT, which I do not like none of these consequences. I think they need to have a deal in two phases. The first phase should be about nuclear. If Iran accepts the highest level of verification, inspection, and cooperation mechanism internationally exists, every IAEA technical questions would be resolved. This is what we already tried within JCPOA's mechanism, and it was successful. We should try it again. Number two, Iran again should accept, to my understanding, some limits on its enrichment and reprocessing, like enriching below 5% to have civilian enrichment, and even some other limits like stockpile and so. Number three, since there is a international concern about the 400 kilogram of Iranian highly enriched uranium stockpile, Iran should accept to dilute or to export all these stockpile in order to remove concerns over potential bomb production. Number four, President Trump wants a deal better than Obama. We all know. That's why he killed JCPOA. Beyond these three main issues, which I said, which already experienced within JCPOA, Trump can have a new initiative, which is a joint nuclear enrichment consortium in the Persian Gulf between Iran, Saudi Arabia, and some other US Arab allies in the region. If there is multilateral enrichment supervised by the United Nations Security Council, supervised by IAEA, rather than national enrichment either in Saudi Arabia or Iran or Turkey or Egypt, this would be the best sustainable long-term solution, and Obama can claim, a big achievement. And number five, then if Iran accepts all these four, the US and Europe should lift nuclear-related sanctions, and Israel, like all other Middle Eastern countries, must join NPT and dismantle its nuclear arsenal to realize United Nations resolutions on nuclear weapon free zone in the Middle East. This is the first phase. The second phase, I believe I wrote it on May 8 in my piece published at Middle East Eye. I wrote it 3 years ago, published by the Journal of US Defense Ministry. I said the United States should mediate to end Israel-Iran mutual hostilities and threats. That time when I wrote, it was security mutual confrontation between Iran and Israel and indirect military. Even that time, I insisted this confrontation should be stopped and the US can mediate. No country should threaten the existence of the other country based on United Nations Charter. Second, Iran and the US need to engage after a nuclear deal to negotiate about regional issues, but they need to accept one major principles. And that is, Iran and the US will accept and will respect each other's legitimate regional interest and role, and will not fight. Neither Iranians would fight American interest in the region, nor the US. And finally, and number three, Iran and the US needs to engage a bilateral negotiation for gradual normalization of their bilateral relations. Bob, I tried to finish it at 40 minutes. At your disposal for questions. Hello?
Bob, you're on mute.
Bob?
Bob, you're on mute.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. I don't know what I was doing wrong, but thank you to those and Ambassador Mousavian. That was really in-depth and comprehensive and balanced. Thank you so much for that excellent talk. And I think we captured most of it on a recording. Hopefully you can, if you had any manuscript you were speaking from and are willing to share that with us, we'd appreciate that too. But I thought there was so much good information in what you just presented, and thank you so much. Let's show Ambassador Mousavian our appreciation. That was
Thank you.
really a very good overview.
Thank you.
So I have a question that was submitted in the chat box. If any of the rest of you would like to submit yours in the chat box, but I think we're a small enough group to where I may be able to let some people unmute. But the question is from Jane Addis. What is known, Ambassador Mousavian, what is known about Israel's nuclear capability?
It is known Israel has nuclear bombs between 90 to 400, but once I was talking to Frank, the most credible number is 90. Frank would correct me if I'm wrong. See, I mean, the problem, Bob, here is that Iran is member of NPT. Israel has not accepted NPT.
Right.
Iran does not have nuclear bomb. Israel does have nuclear bomb. Iran has given access to the IAEA, and even recently you read in news that 70% of the IAEA's budget and manpower and inspection was only for Iran in 2024. I mean, since 2003, over 50% of the IAEA budget and inspection has been about Iran. And now Israel has attacked Iran, claiming that Israel is going to fight proliferation, nuclear bomb in the Middle East. There is only one country with nuclear bomb. There is no other country.
Right. Well, thank you for that. And just to expedite things, since we have
We have Jeff and Frank.
people.
As I see, we have Jeff and Frank.
Yeah, well, Jeff and Frank and Kip have all had their hands up. So I'd like to call on Jeff Laurenti first. Jeff is the board chair of the Coalition for Peace Action, and you got unmuted. Good. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, actually, two questions, if I can, Hossein. The first is with regard to the cooperation or co-sponsorship by Britain, France, and Germany of the American-led resolution in the IAEA. Is it your sense that they were, all of the Europeans, were equally apprised of American intent to support an Israeli military operation? Or is it your view that they were duped into thinking that this will just ratchet up the diplomatic pressure a bit in the next round of negotiations? And then second, more broadly, since the Iranian response to the US attack has been fairly performative, symbolic, they even told us where they were going to hit so that we could shoot down the missiles and such, and made it in effect cost-free, because the American public doesn't want to get into a war, but there's a big share of the public that is perfectly comfortable with a one-off bombing strike that doesn't seem to have consequences. What for?
Jeff, you're frozen. Why don't we ask Ambassador Mousavian if he could respond?
Yeah, as far as I understood, first of all, Jeff, I don't know whether you are back, you hear me or not, Jeff. I mentioned some of the facts, like the day exactly Europeans, they were negotiating with Iran, American B-52, they were on the air on their way to attack Iran. And one day before the IAEA resolution on June 12th, the AU3, they canceled the telephone conversation with Araghchi. Araghchi didn't know really what is the issue, why they canceled. And I think they knew what's going to happen. I think they were completely informed. But all this is just some guess. Jeff, what I know in fact, which is 100% clear for me, is one of my friends in Tehran who called me on June 12th in Tehran time at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and told me, Hossein, I am very close with the director of Lufthansa in Tehran, and I was going to go to Germany. He called me and he told me, Muhammad, if you want to go, you should go with this flight tonight. There would be no flight after that. Therefore, even they have informed their organizations in the Middle East that there would be an attack tonight, and Lufthansa would stop flights to Tehran. This is, I think, about your first question. About the second question, although the US attacked Iran surprisingly without previous notification, and even if you remember, President Trump said, I'm giving 2 weeks time, but he attacked Iran in the first 2 days.
Yes.
You remember. But Iranians, which at least for this part, I really respect what they did, they informed Americans that we are going to attack. We don't want any Americans to be killed. Ask your personnel to leave the base. We will attack. But we are not going to continue if you attack us again. And if you attack us again, we would not inform you in advance. You will bear responsibility for American lives.
Yes. Thank you, Ambassador Mousavian. And of course, even President Trump thanked Iran for giving that advance notice. So that certainly saved American lives without question. Professor Von Hippel, are you, and I see, Neil, can you unmute Professor Von Hippel? Frank, you can do it yourself. Good.
Yeah. Thanks, Hossein. That was a good overview, very depressing. The one question I had was the IAEA warned of the attack? That would be, I mean, because of course you could have had IAEA inspectors in some of these facilities that were bombed. So that would have been a concern, but then it would have been also made the IEA in a sense complicit.
Right.
And so it's a very tricky issue.
Yeah, I think, see, Frank, nowadays in Iran, before we had two school of thoughts in Iran. One was calling for withdrawal from NPT, the radicals. They were saying we should not let IAEA, they are spies of the Western countries. They are not for verification. They are just for spying the Iranian nuclear military sites, and later Iran would be attacked. And the moderates, they were saying, no, we should be committed to international rules and regulations. We should cooperate. And so even today, I saw a news in radical media saying that Americans with B-52 bombers, they could not destroy 400 kilogram of Iranian stockpile, but Rouhani and Zarif, they destroyed 11,000 kilogram of Iranian stockpile because of the JCPOA. Who is more betraying the country, Trump or Rouhani and Zarif? You know, this is the atmosphere now. But nevertheless, even moderates, Frank, now they are very suspicious. And they all think these inspectors are coming or are willing to come to give a report to US and Israel for the second attack.
Thank you, Ambassador Mousavian. And before I turn to our next questioner, I want to just give a brief shout out to Professor Von Hippel, who is truly a world-class expert on nuclear weapons issues and has been a great advisor to us, helped us with many lobby visits and presentations over the years. And so we're honored, Professor Von Hippel, to have you join this program. today, and your insights are extremely helpful to us over the years. Okay, Kip Cherry, the co-chair of our advocacy committee. You're the next one on the list, and please either submit through the chat box or raise your virtual hand if you want to ask a question after Kip. You're still on mute, Kip. Oh, Neil, can you unmute her?
No, I cannot. She has to do it herself.
Kip. Let's just see here. Yeah, Kip, it doesn't look like can you just click on the mute section of your box and then it doesn't give you an unmute? Well, the only other idea I have then is to ask.
Oh,
your
wait, it
question.
worked. It worked.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, so here's my question. And Ambassador, I agree a lot with what you've said, but it doesn't bring us to the table. Now we are in a mess, and everybody has grievances, and there's good reasons on all sides and all that sort of thing. What needs to happen over the next week or two to get people even to shake hands, to get to the table? Little tiny steps, because we're a long ways from getting everybody over all of the upsets that have occurred. And, there's certainly understanding that everybody has their points of view and they're going to stick to them. So what are we going to do to get them to the table in your view?
See, Kip, I think one of the most important problems is about President Trump's changing position every day, if not every hour. I mean, today he writes, why you should not go for regime change. Tomorrow he says, oh no, regime change would bring a chaos.
Right.
Today he says, I'm not after attacking Iran. Tomorrow he attacks. Every day or week or even sometimes within a day, I see different positions. And Iranians, they really don't understand what is the US asking. Once President Trump publicly said, oh, no, we are going to make a deal based on verification. We can have verification 10 times inspections. Witkoff came to TV and said, no, we have agreed on a deal based on verification, based on the IAEA, based on NPT. And a week later said, oh, no, all enrichment facilities should be completely destroyed. And imagine when you talk with a country, a nation with 7,000 years of civilization, you say unconditional surrender. I mean, who can believe you are really after diplomacy? I think the most important issue would be for President Trump to keep some statements which is not contradictory to international rules and regulations. And then stop threatening, everyday threatening, 1 week, 2 weeks, 2 days, 2 we would be destroyed. You will be gone. I will assassinate you. I'm the supreme leader of Iran. I know where you are. If I want to assassinate you, I can do it in a minute. I mean, these type of statements. I think this is deal killer. And about the principles of a deal, Kip, I think I presented my ideas.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ambassador Mousavian. And I'm not seeing other hands or questions in the chat box, but so let me just share something that I mentioned to Ambassador Mousavian when we were meeting in advance of this webinar. And that is an insight that I got about the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is probably the closest the world ever came to a nuclear war since Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You all who are old enough to remember, at least, may remember that the way that confrontation was characterized was that it was sort of this macho showdown between the Khrushchev, the leader of the then Soviet Union, and John F. Kennedy, our president at the time, and that they were eyeball to eyeball. as our then Secretary of State characterized it, and Khrushchev blinked, that that's what prevented a nuclear war from happening. That's a myth. That doesn't hold up to scrutiny. And I had to do, a fair amount of reading and digging to find this out. But what actually happened is JFK told his leadership team, I want to know what is the grievance, what is the Soviet Union and Khrushchev troubled about? What do they think that's happening that is unjust and unfair? And the answer came back to JFK. Well, they're saying that the US already has nuclear weapons, the Thors and Jupiters were the names of them, stationed in Turkey that are equally close to the Soviet Union's territory as Cuba is to America's territory. And so they're saying that essentially, if you want us to withdraw Khrushchev, in other words, if you want Khrushchev to withdraw nuclear missiles from Cuba, you need to do the same thing so that it's balanced and fair. You need to do the same thing with those nuclear weapons that are stationed in Turkey. Well, there was a backdoor deal. It was kept quiet because JFK felt like he would look weak somehow if it became public, but it worked. It worked. And so these kinds of engaging in authentic diplomacy, as you said, Ambassador, not threats, not changing every other minute, not threatening to assassinate, which, by the way, all presidents in recent years have said that that's illegal. To threaten to assassinate the president of another country. That's not legal under international law. It's not legal under US law. And yet here's Trump doing it over and over. And so, the way that these things unfold is when there is reasonable and rational discussions and negotiations that take place. And that's just a very sort of top line overview of what I heard Ambassador Mousavian calling for. But he gave way more detail and way more depth than I could possibly recite here. And so I'm very grateful for that. But we need to be mindful that diplomacy is what saves lives. Diplomacy is what prevents war. And so we as a people, we especially as peace activists in this country, we need to be pressuring our country to negotiate in good faith. That's what will solve this problem. Okay. Are there others who want to ask a question? We're ending a little bit early, but I guess on a beautiful Sunday afternoon, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But, Professor Van Hippel, yes, go ahead and unmute.
I'll just say one thing. There's a lot of concern about the 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium hexafluoride, and it is. And I think Bill Broad made a mistake in the New York Times when he said it would be difficult to convert that into metal. In fact, it would be fairly easy to improvise a way to convert it into metal. I told him that he hasn't responded yet on that. But it does provide a conundrum. And I think there really has to be some kind of mutual confidence established before Iran lets the IAEA check where that material is. And there's also the possibility, we don't know, that in the meantime, Iran might be, in fact, trying to have decided that, in fact, it needs a warhead or warheads to deter future attacks. And I don't know whether Hossein has a comment on that observation or not, but
I don't know, Frank, you should correct me if I'm wrong. Even if Iran has 400 kilogram of 60% enriched uranium, even if they decide to make 10 nuclear bombs, they will need warheads. And for warheads, it will take Iran 1 or 2 years. They don't have it. And therefore, it was not really an imminent threat. But if they want to go for a nuclear bomb, which I really hope not, they will go for diplomacy rather than nuclear bomb. But if they want to go, I think they will continue this legislation of the parliament for suspending cooperation with the IAEA because IAEA will not and is not going to secure Iranian nuclear facilities or provides security for assassination of Iranian nuclear scientists. I mean, these are the IAEA's rules and regulations, but they are not going to give any guarantee, any assurances to Iran. And then Iranians, they would say, oh, we are ready to cooperate. We are ready to go even tomorrow. But you need to give us all assurances about your commitments, your duties, your obligations under the IAEA statute. And the US and Europe are not going to give it because all options are on the table for the US and they want to have free hand anytime, any day they can attack Iran again. And this may take some time, Frank, if they want, but nevertheless, they would need to master the warheads, the missiles, warheads. It takes at least 1 year, as far as I understand.
Do you want to respond, Professor Van Hippel?
Frank is muted.
Yeah, he's trying to unmute, I think. Oh, so let me go on, and we'll come back to Professor Van Hippel if we find a way to unmute him. There is one more question that has been posted. Oh, two
Okay.
more now. So let me go through the. Oh, go ahead, Professor Van Hippel. Yes, go ahead.
Well, it depends on the kind of warhead you're talking about. It also depends on how far Iran got in its weapons design program. You know, in before 2003, and whether they have preserved that ability. I think a simple. I mean, I think it's probably unlikely that Iran would have a warhead so compact that it could be delivered by a missile. But something simple like a Hiroshima bomb, which could be delivered in some other way, would in fact be possible in a shorter time.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, Professor Van Hippel. So let me get these last two questions, and I'm actually honored that some of the leaders of our sister peace action groups are asking these questions. The first one is from Jim Anderson, who is one of the leaders of New York State Peace Action and himself a veteran of the United States military. Jim asks the question, what do you recommend, Ambassador Mousavian, what do you recommend that we tell our fellow citizens?
My recommendation, Frank knows, always I have been working, insisting that Iran and the US, of course, they have disputes. Of course, they have many disputed issues. But at the same time, they have many issues of common interests. And I really cannot, Bob, find many countries or even some 2 or 3 countries that they are not enjoying Iran-US confrontations. I would say overwhelming majority of countries, they are really enjoying the fight between Iran and the US. The big powers, the regional powers, everybody is enjoying. And this is a good lesson for Tehran and Washington to understand why everybody is looking for confrontation between these 2 countries, 2 nations. Why for the first time they should not sit together and make a deal like the type of the deal Iran and the US made 2015 on the nuclear. The nuclear was the most important disputed issues. It worked, Bob. They had direct negotiations. President Obama accepted to make a deal based on rules, international rules, regulations, which is NPT on the nuclear. It worked. Iran was in full compliance for 3 years. While Iran was in full compliance, the US withdrew and violated the deal. And we are now here. We are at the verge of a regional war between Iran and the US. I mean, if Israelis, they would be successful to drag one more time the US in another attack by Israel or the US, then Iranians, I think they will become crazy. And then they would not care about anything because this would mean a complete existential threat for Iran. That's why I think more than ever we need diplomacy. We need diplomacy, and the deal can be reached on the principles I said. Highest level of transparency measures. Iran is ready to get rid of this stockpile. Iran is ready to go to civilian enrichment, which is below 5%. Iran is ready to have open nuclear program 24 hours, 7 days supervised by IAEA cameras. Iran is ready. And why we should go to war? I mean, I really don't see any reason except if you are following the Israeli agenda. I mean, Israelis, you remember 2002, Prime Minister Netanyahu came to US Congress and said Iraq has WMD, and I promise you, if you attack Iraq, we would have very peaceful, stable Middle East. And the US attacked, lost thousands of American bloods and trillions of dollars. It should not be repeated. It should not be repeated. Bob, you are muted again.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm sorry. I don't know. We were getting confused about my being able to unmute, even though I'm a co-host. So this is the final question now, and it comes from Martha Spees, who's a leader of Maine Peace Action. She says, I still remain confused about Tulsi Gabbard's announcements. No way to trust intelligence assurances from here on out. No one to trust, no stability. And she wants to know if you have any comments on that.
No, I think what she said 2 months ago in her hearing at Congress, she very clearly said there is no evidence of any decision making by Iranian politicians to make nuclear bomb. She made it very clear, but I have been told, Bob, that even after President Trump disputed this assessment, once again, American security establishments have reported to the Congress that we stick to our assessment. There is no decision by Iranian officials to go for nuclear bomb.
Right. Very good. Well, thank you so much for clarifying. And we are at the end of our time now that we allotted for this webinar. I thank all of you for coming. We should be having the video on our website in the not too distant future, and perhaps even some of the written remarks the ambassador hopefully will provide to us. And this really helped widen my understanding of the issue, Ambassador Mousavian. You know, we don't realize that we're in sort of this self-absorbed American communications system where we're sort of hearing things over and over that seem to favor the American view on things. So I really appreciate your bringing so many things to our attention that we don't hear from our media and from our other sources of information. So We really appreciate your taking the time to help expand our view and to understand the depth, with more depth, what's going on and what we might be able to do. So will the rest of you just join me? And please, let's show Ambassador Mousavian
Thank you
our
very much,
appreciation.
Bob. Thank you to everyone. It was
All right.
really great to be with you this afternoon. I wish you all the best. All the best.
Thank you. Thanks.
Have a good
Continue
weekend,
your
the
good
rest
work.
weekend.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Have a good
Bye-bye.
rest of